Hello, welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thank you very much for tuning in and following me as I explore the amazing, incredible, diverse, wide world of pens. You see in front of you two pens which I've been eagerly awaiting their arrival. Hongdian N7s. Very, very interesting. They're metal pens. And do we notice a trend now? Pen BBS 499, Mahjong, their piston filler, which I reviewed earlier, and we will be comparing those pens a little bit later on. But these two pens the amount of detail in them, the incredible build quality, the fact that that gray one has a really interesting dark finish to all the metal trim and including the nib, and the blue one just is amazing colors. A lot of detail in the cap. They just are amazing pens, very interesting, and hopefully you're going to look forward to my review of these pens because I'm looking forward to that too. And the crabs are very, very happy to be working and holding up these phenomenal, interesting looking pens. Stay tuned for all of the details to follow. We're going to give you a little promotion. Subscribe, like, comment. Let's go, interact. Because the crabs are going to wink and we're going to continue on. So we're going to explore the blue Peacock in detail, and then we'll look at the gray one, and we'll just focus on the differences. So, overall, excellent combination, metal cap, turned acrylic barrel where the piston lies. The cap comes off in a little bit over 1 1/4 turns, which is really nice. You have a typical two-tone Hongdian nib there, number 6, plastic feed. Nice section here, which feels like it could be a metal section. It has that same coating that the cap does. Let's focus on the barrel. That acrylic just has a nice depth to it, a little bit of pearlescence. You have these 2 rings here by the blind cap, 2 rings on either side of the ink window, metal ring here at the bottom, and everything is plated in that same color of gold, which is very, very nice. The blind cap, turn it counterclockwise to extend the piston. You can see that piston come into the ink window and it stops. So at least it goes all the way down, which is good. And you can see how it separates up here. I don't really know how this piston would come out. There seems to be a little opening there in that metal ring that you could possibly put a tool in there, but tool's not being sold. Nice flat metal cap finial at the end of the barrel. And then if you turn it, the piston retracts. And this is a little bit of transparency, which we're going to look at with the LED. So let's turn to the cap. Same clip that Hongdian's been using a lot, so that is one similarity. An interesting design covered with acrylic dome ring, probably holds in the clip. and just a lot of peacock feathers. And then we see some writing, which is peacock, and then Qing Ho, which could mean peacock love, or Qing Ho could be a reference to a form of pottery that's done in a nice blue cobalt color, which is kind of similar to what the base color here is. You have a rendering of a peacock here, very well done, at the bottom of the cap, right above the designation of the pen model. Not exactly centered, but I'm not going to worry about little details. And you have Hongdian engraved very nicely. Nice thin cap band, which is fine because it's a metal cap. We're going to use the LED to look inside, but they just did a very, very nice job at enameling whatever technique they used to put these details onto this cap. Very well done. So let's bring in the LED and explore this with a little bit different light. So we have some very light diffuse sunlight coming in through my shades, and it just again shows off that color. I see a little bit of green in there. When I first saw the pen, I thought it was more green than blue, but with different light it's going to show up with different colors. We bring in the LED, we'll show off those colors a little bit more. If we look inside the cap, one of the things that we don't see is we don't see that usual step up that would seal against the bottom of the section, but there is a nice plastic liner in there, plastic threads to engage when you cap it, screw it onto the section. It looks like that might seal up, but there's going to be a lot of air there for the nib, so it may be a little bit of a drying out issue if you leave it set for a while. But let's look a little bit more closely at the resin in this barrel. Very well done. Just a nice combination of materials, enameled metal, nice matte color to it. Then we have that nice acrylic barrel, the ink window, and then a blind cap done in the same material and color as the section and the cap. If we look at the transparency in the barrel, one of the things we'll see is that piston doesn't move very far up. Here's a whole bunch of that piston rod exposed, and you would think that that piston should come up a little bit higher. Maybe you'll get a mil or maybe a little bit over a mil. I'm not going to measure it. I couldn't pull out the nib. It looks like it could be a nib unit, but it doesn't unscrew, and I'm not going to force it. There's only so much pressure that I'll put on it. So you're not going to see this pen taken apart. And to me, I don't have to take apart every pen that I have. If it warrants it, fine. If I can do it easily, fine. But I'm not going to jeopardize the people who made this pen by doing something that they are not encouraging you to do. Obviously, the way that piston is designed, which is unique, it's not an easy thing to take apart. Unlike some other pen makers like Pen BBS that make every one of their pens easy to take apart with minimal or simple tools. But they did a good job. And while we're at it, let's just see that piston come down just so you can be sure that that's what you're seeing in there. And yes, it is. So I would say right now that's the biggest flaw that they could have designed at, so the piston had more movement and you pulled up more ink, but there's enough ink there to last most people for at least a day's worth of writing, if not longer. And I have an extra fine nib in here, so it's not going to lay down a lot of ink. So let's look at the gray one under an LED light. We have very low light coming in, and that still stays in that kind of gray family. As we bring in the LED, we'll get to show off those details under a different type of light. The LED almost is too powerful and it washes out some of that detail in the cap, but it's still nice to look at. But the real star is this resin they have in the barrel. And like the blue one, it has some nice subtle swirling to it, some pearlescence. It's just a very upscale look in my view. And just to confirm, we'll take a look through the barrel, and yeah, you can see that piston is in that same position that it was in the Blue Peacock. So that's part of the design, not just something the Blue Peacock had. And then, of course, that black nib, just the whole pen aesthetically, I very much enjoy the way they put together all those details for us to enjoy while we use the pen to write with and put ink down. Now we have full lumens on the pen. I just find this detail to be phenomenal. The rabbit at the top of the cap, those kind of astrological symbols that are there on the cap, moons and everything else. You know, rabbit month in case you didn't know what it was all about. And a nice stylized rabbit there where we had a peacock on the Peacock pen. And that nice gray resin with a little bit of color in it. Just very nicely done, that swirls. Cap comes off in about one turn, which is very nice. And there's that black nib, which I'm just very impressed with. The way that they work to keep all of these little design elements and details that all work together extremely well. Very, very impressed. Hopefully, it's coming through for you too. These pens have exceeded my expectations by a lot. Considering all these metal pens that are coming out are all about $25 to $30 US, so they're all in the same price range. But they've certainly knocked this one out of the ballpark with the amount of detail on the pen. Great. So I got very interested in all the symbols on the cap. So there are 6 rows. This is row number 1. And I identified all of the symbols. There are 7 suns, 5 moons, 3 rabbits, 3 circles, and 1 spiral. That's row number 2. And I identified each of these with a description and a number. And here's row number 3, which is the more interesting of the rows because that has a lot of differences in it and a lot of similarities. But why is it month rabbit? Rabbit is a yearly zodiac symbol in the Chinese zodiac calendar. Here's row number 4. And we have some new designs, like I call that a circle. More suns, a couple more different moons. There's row number 5. Again, some interesting things. And then row 6 is underneath of the clip, but the 2 unique symbols are beneath the clip, and underneath of the clip are some more symbols. So I'm just impressed. 19 different symbols arranged on this cap. I just can't imagine the discussion and the decision-making process that went into picking out which one of these 19 symbols were going to be put on to this gray rabbit pen. So we need to do a quick comparison between the N1S and the N7, the first piston filler from Hongdian, and now their latest. Yes, I think they do share a clip, but that's it. So one of the things that I'm impressed with is the certain subtle changes that they made. One, the cap comes off with less turns, but then if you look at the body, there's now a metal ring top and bottom of the ink window versus one at the top. Metal ring at the bottom, no metal ring at the bottom. I can either take it or leave it, but I do think aesthetically and visually it kind of cleans up and makes the pen look nicer. And then on the blind cap, we have those 2 rings versus 1 ring. Both of them, I guess, also share this flat finial at the bottom of the blind cap. And both of them also share into the fact that that piston doesn't retract very far. Here's some examples of my review of the N1S. And I also compared it to the T1 from Mahjong, or it was called Noonman at that time, that shows how that piston could be retracted a lot more based on a different design of the piston filling system. The caps are also different. You got a metal cap versus a turned acrylic cap, and it's a little bit heavier, but not as much as you would expect. So I give kudos to the engineers who made some subtle changes, advancements, improvements. They just should have redesigned the piston filler to provide more capacity, and then it would have been a win-win-win. So I talked about the metal pen explosion, at least in some of the Chinese pen makers. Here we have the T5 from Mahjong. This is that black matte one, and these two have a very nice subtle color fireworks design on the cap and barrel. Here's the two 499s from Pen BBS, this matte black one, and this extremely interesting to the eye, one might say, gold one. And here we have the two N7s from Hongdian. So these pens all have certain different elements to them. These are piston fillers, these are piston fillers, these are cartridge converters. These are the heaviest by a long shot, the Pen BBS ones. They're also the longest by a good deal, but they're not as girthy. You know, these seem to have more of an Aurora 88 characteristics to them. These are, I think, a little bit more unique. They got some features from different piston fillers, but you know my perspective on it. You're not going to make any pen that's 100% unique, and if you do, year of the ox, some people might not like it because it's different. So therefore, you need some commonality. People need to feel something is more similar to them than different. But not me. I can enjoy any type of pen made any way. So here's some pens to compare the N7 to. Here's an M800, and it's in the same ballpark size-wise. The M800 is slightly larger, a little bit in girth, a little bit in length. You can see how these two bands with the blind cap work, and they also work well with the N7. Here's a Pen BBS 355, which I just happen to have lying by, and it's a flat top pen. So I put it in perspective, and it kind of lengthwise longer than the other pens, and girthwise about similar to the N7. And just for sorts and giggles is a Pilot Metropolitan, which is certainly a small pen in this group. So what ink to put into the blue Peacock, but Presidential Blue by Diamine. Haven't used this ink in a while. Nice that they put a label on the top of the cap, but then the front label doesn't tell what color it is. But it is 80 milliliters, so we got a decent amount of ink. And I think this is one of the better blues. Nice, clean, solid, nothing fancy blue. No sheen. Might get a little bit of shading. But if we look at the chromatography, we'll see there's a little bit of variation of color in this ink. You know, maybe a little bit of purple there. A little bit stays behind in the water, but, you know, probably no water resistance. But I did two, probably couldn't find one of them, and did another one. But at least they're consistent. The real question is how does it work in that extra fine nib that's in the blue Peacock N7? So I've now spent some nice time with these great N7 pens from Hongdian, and I can say without a doubt I really like these pens a lot. They write well, they're incredibly well made, they just have a unique look that I've grown to appreciate more over time. The way they put together the colors, the design, just amazing. Fit and finish, attention to little details. There are 19 different symbols here on the cap, on the gray rabbit. And the Peacock is more simplistic in its design, but still equally interesting to the eye. And that resin that they've used for the barrel, again, is just a nice design. So I can imagine sitting in a marketing design meeting at Hongdian and coming up with this. Hopefully they had a lot of fun with it. They certainly did create two pens, and one has to ask a question as to whether there'll be more in a series. It's 11 other animals to do in the zodiac, so that's one option. And there are certainly a lot of birds to do. We'll give you some dimensions so you can put these in perspective. And now we're going to take a look at how the extra fine and fine nib write and compare it to the extra fine nib that I have in the N1S. Stay tuned. I think this shows pretty well the difference between the fine nib and the extra fine nib in the N7s. And here's an extra fine nib. Looks like the same type of nib that's in the blue Peacock, but it certainly lays down a finer line. Now this is Kaveco Orange Sunrise. This is Diamine Presidential Blue. And this is my Noodler's mix. I wanted to get a blue-gray, so I have a lot of Lexington gray here, and a little bit of lobster blue, and just a touch of 1984 for maybe some purple highlights. I think the Noodler's ink is very wet, and it does dry extremely fast, which is a property of Lexington gray, so that property survived through my little mixing operation that I did. And the Diamine ink flows very, very well. It doesn't dry as quick, obviously, as the Noodler's. And the Kaveco Sunrise Orange also is kind of in between the two as far as drying. So a viewer said that they found the sounds of the nib on paper objectionable. And I haven't really talked about it, but the mic is very, very sensitive. I don't hear what I hear when I listen to the video. All of these nibs write smooth with a little bit of feedback. They're all stiff nibs, but I would consider them all 7.5 out of 10 as far as rating these nibs. They're very reliable, very consistent. Couple days, no drying out, so that's a good thing. So I think I need to rate these pens. And it's a tough one because I really like the pens. I think they could appeal to a lot of pen lovers, people that like to write, people that like to collect very unique and interesting looking pens. So it's going to get a 9.8. The design, construction, build gets a check. The nib gets a check. What it's missing is not a great variety of nibs, extra fine and fine. So that kind of drops the rating down a little bit. That section I didn't talk about, it has a decent tactile feel to it. It's not slippery. So that works out okay. But I also think that it is an interesting, unique design, and some people might not find it to their appeal, which is fine. My statements are, there's not a pen for everybody, but everybody should be able to find a pen. With that, I'd like to thank all of you for watching. Enjoy, like, subscribe, comment, whatever you're in the mood for. I hope this video finds you safe, healthy, and happy, enjoying your pens, enjoying your life, having fun. If you've reached the end of this video, and we're going to say bye, Stay tuned.